There are approximately 62 different types of alien. I call them extraterrestrials. And that there is many different types of gray types, different types of gray-blue types, different sizes of grays, different reptilian types, you know, like for instance, so there's all kinds of different gray types, okay? And there's different types of the mammalian types, which are, like Bigfoot is a mammalian. Interesting enough, a lot of us have seen another being. The closest thing we can resembles to it, you know, for us is the Ewok on Star Wars. So some of us have seen similar types like that are short, and then of course you have the Bigfoot. It's kind of not sure if he's an extraterrestrial or interdimensional, and that's the whole thing here. You have time travelers too. So some of the grays are time travelers. Some of them have come back from their future to the point where in their future they don't have husbands, wives, they don't have children, they have cloned. Basically, they cloned their whole society now. And so they're trying, and they're dying because you clone, you cannot continue that kind of genetics. So their planets are dying, so they're coming back. And because we are probably genetically very close to them, as well as since the beginning of time, these different races have been coming to Earth. And Earth is kind of, I mean, some people call it a test plan or a petri dish. I tend to feel that it's a lot more that the family connection, the genetic connection between all the different species have been coming here since the beginning of time. So they have a stake in us, they care about us, and they do care if we destroy our planet. Besides, they care if we destroy our planet because it's going to destroy so many, not just the ecological of our planet, but it will destroy everything, especially if, you know, if they blow it out of the...
I'll start with the first conscious memory that I have. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I moved to Vegas in September of 2002 and enrolled for school for massage therapy shortly after that. And that's where I met some people who actually introduced me to the whole world of spirituality that is pretty much not very much embraced in the Midwest. It's very conservative. So to speak about aliens or spiritual, ghostly experiences, paranormal, could end you up in a psych ward. And shortly after I moved here, I was driving a Pontiac Transport, and I was either on Flamingo on the west side of town heading east, or I was on Tropicana heading in the same direction. And I was still really new in town. I can't remember if it happened before I started massage school or if it was the very beginning. But I'm driving, I stop, I'm at a stoplight, and for whatever reason, I looked into my side view mirror and a car is pulling up. As it's pulling up, I can see that there are 4 reptilians in this mirror. 4, and they don't look quite the same. If you saw V back in the 80s, they don't look quite the same as that, but that'd probably be the best description I could give. And I just froze, like, what the hell am I seeing? What's wrong with me? Did I touch something? Am I tripping on LSD? What? And then as the car pulled up, I looked over and I see all 4 people in the vehicle are turned and looking up at me. And they all are smiling like, yeah, we know you saw. But at this point, they're in human form. And I couldn't understand what, like, that really made me confused because I knew what I saw. But then why, when they came up next to me, did they not look the same? Why did they look like humans? So that made me think maybe I just, my eyes are playing tricks on me, the desert heat, I'm dehydrated. And then when I'm in school for massage, one of my instructors had talked about, on one of the breaks, about the reptilians. And I think she was specifically speaking about draconians. And she said how they can shapeshift. And one student who had come in to make up a class one night, he was on the table, she was massaging him, and she saw his eyes shapeshift from human to the reptilian. And so when she was talking about that, I said, oh my God. And so she knew. I think she was able to see that I had had an experience and was trying to encourage me to speak about it. So I told her what I saw, and I said, I haven't told anybody this since I've moved here because I thought they would think I'm crazy, losing my mind, and I just played it off that I was dehydrated. And she just chuckled and saying, no, you saw what you saw. And I said, well, how is it that they could shapeshift from this reptilian form in mere seconds of me looking in the mirror and then coming up and being in human form? And she said, chances are they didn't actually physically shapeshift. It's because of the mirror. They can't stop people who are able to see from seeing. Just like the tubes that come down from the sky to the mountaintops or into the mountains where some of these beings are beamed into. She said she can see them. Other humans can't because they're not ready, they're not willing. She said if you're open to seeing, they can't stop you from seeing what you're able to see. And that's why I was able to see it in the reflection. I had nothing stopping me from being able to see. So that blew the lid off my world because my background is psychology. I was a very practicing Jew. I go to temple every Friday night, almost every Saturday morning. And this just rattled everything off of the box of what I knew. And I continued on with being open to it and opening more the spiritual, the paranormal, sixth sense abilities. I had an experience one night. I had come home and I was so upset by the darkness because I'm afraid of the dark and all the ghostly experiences I've been having or had been having. I was so full of fear. I came home from school one night and all my lights were off in my apartment. No logical explanation for it. And so I turned on the one light that I had and had to go around and turning on all these lights. And I was so upset that a lamp flew across the room. And I was scared because I thought something like a ghost or something, some demon spirit had done that. But at the same time, I was angry and not scared because I knew that I had done that. So I know that psychokinesis or telekinesis is actual. It's something that we're all able to do. You just need to know how to connect in with it. And the only time that things like that happen where things move around me is when I'm in a state of really extreme fear. So that opened me up even further because my cabinet doors would be open and drawers would be open and it would be, the upper cabinets that my cats couldn't have opened. Trying to think what other things. It just seems like all this paranormal stuff has been going on hand in hand.
You going to mug me? Am I going to mug you?
Is that gorgeous or what, eh?
And I believe I can run a decent marathon.
Thank you very much.
Download Veely now.
My grandfather died when I was 6, and we had his urn in our downstairs basement. We had pictures of him and flowers. And I remember going downstairs one day, and my grandfather was standing there, and it was about a year after he died, and he was just standing there. I could see him, and it was very clear, and it shook me, and I was frightened. And he just looked at me and goes, "It's all right, I'm here." And then he just went away, like grains of sand just went away. And it was just so freaky. I didn't go downstairs a long time after that, just because it's one of those things that happens and you're just like, whoa, like I don't want to see that ever again. And I used to be late at night, and I used to get like a face. It used to come to my window, and it would like say things to me, and I wouldn't understand what it was saying. It was like it was speaking a foreign language, and it was one of those things because it's something you don't experience every day, so it frightens you, and it keeps happening, and so you're like, okay, well maybe this is normal. It happens to other people. Like I was a very young child, and I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be there. And then one day we had gone to church, and they talked about being visited by like Satan and how it was bad. So I immediately was like, oh my gosh, like this is the devil, like I need to like. So I started praying a lot. And whenever this face came to me, it was very odd looking face, had gigantic eyes. The best I can describe it, it looked like a deer with like big mouth and big eyes, and it had ears that like pointed straight up. And it that's the only way I can describe it, like remembering it was like it looked like a deer, like just the head of a deer. And I started like praying. I was like I was like no, like, you know, using like Jesus' name, like telling it no, like I can't talk to you, like this is bad. And over the years it went away. And then we moved around, my parents divorced, and you know, like things happen throughout your life. And so throughout those times, like I didn't really bother with anything. No like spirits came and bothered me, and it was just a good time kind of until we moved to Ireland for a little while. And there we used to we lived by a castle. We used to go walking in the forest there, and my little brother and I, we decided to go out late at night during a holiday. And we were walking just in the forest, and all of a sudden we heard singing, and it was very like chanting almost. And we were like, oh my gosh, like, you know, other people are like doing like witchcraft everywhere. We have to go watch this, like being kids, like the Hardy Boys, because we thought we were cool. So we follow it, and we get to a place that was called I think it was called like Bluebell Hill, and all the locals didn't go there. They said we're not allowed to because it was a fairy knoll. Angel and I are Americans, and so we're stupid. And so we go to this area, and I don't know like how best to describe it, but it was literally like dancing lights going in and out of the trees, and they're like big balls, like they're like this, and you could see them, they're huge. And we're like, what is this? And so I was like, oh, we have to get closer, because in all the horror movies, there's always that person that's like, oh, we have to go investigate, and then something bad happens. So it was like, no, if you get any closer, there's a myth that if you go and you disturb a fairy knoll, that they'll come and they'll kill you, and like they'll curse you. So we were all scared, and I was like, okay, fine. So we didn't go any closer, but I went back the next day with a friend of mine, and same thing, like singing, and like there was the big balls just going in and out of the trees, and it was mystical, and there was a sense of like fun and like, but also danger, like that sense that if we did get closer, you know, don't, like standoffish kind of.
I was 14, and I felt like something wasn't right in the room, so I kind of rolled over in bed, and I looked, and I saw this grayish-brown alien, big eyes, 2 slots in its nose, small, tight kind of mouth, very tall, with a robe that started about here. And essentially, I ran into my mom's room, and I was like, Mom, there's an alien in my room. And she's like, okay. I was freaking out, because we didn't know aliens were good back then. We thought, oh, they're bad, you know, I'm gonna get probed or something. So she tried to kick it out. It started coming to me a lot. I always see the same alien every time I've had about a few experiences with him, and once I started to realize, okay, so he's probably not going to do anything bad, I'm starting to, you know, I think see him more now that I'm not afraid of him. And then after that, my next experience was just I started seeing him all the time. Suddenly he disappeared for a while. And then I started meditating. And that's when I really started to see him again, was every time I meditate, he comes into my mind and I can see him. And I'm like, go away. And he still comes back. He's like, nope, I'm gonna bug you even more. And from there, I've just seen him late at night in my room. I see him almost sometimes as like a ghost, kind of transparent, and sometimes I see him solid. I've seen a few other, like one time I saw a short one in my room. And it was short, skinny. I can't describe really that much detail because I didn't look at it for too long. I was, yet again, scared. And let me think. After that, I just began having dreams with aliens and began seeing them more sporadically. We were about a month ago down here to try to find a house, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw an alien standing over me and my mom. She was in the other bed in the hotel room, and that was probably the last experience I've really had with them.
Or most, of course, resemble us genetics and emotionally, because they have more of a connection to us. Then we have the reptilians, there's, I know of at least 8 different groups of reptilians, and because I've had encounters with 3 of them, so, and I've talked to other people. My first encounter with this reptilian was very, very positive. He would come in an energy form first, and I had subsequent quite a few contacts with him that way and never saw him as anything, because he knew good and well that I would not be able to handle it, because I was always phobic about any kind of reptiles my whole life. Interestingly, you know why, I don't know, because of my connection with him. That I did find out later, but he just one night I said, "You're not this energy. You're not. I know you are. You look different. I know, and I can feel. I don't know how to put it other than the real way. Unconditionally loving. They were there. He was a very unconditionally loving being. Never ever harmed me, and in fact, actually rescued me from a situation on an underground base that I probably might have ended up dying from. But with other negative reptilians, because you've got your positive and negative, you've got your yin and yang, just as you have positive and negative humans, you've got positive and negative ET groups, and some of them look alike. So anyway, I told him, I'm ready to see you, and he said, telepathically, it's always telepathically. He says, are you absolutely sure? And I said, yes, I'm absolutely sure. And he said, okay, if you're sure. So then I seen the energy kind of transmute, and there he was standing. He was about 7 feet plus, 7 feet 5, 6, something like that. He had green skin, kind of, I felt it was like avocado, but I have seen him when he looked a little bit darker too. And he had yellow, really bright yellow eyes, but yet they were very kind. He never showed me his teeth, ever, in the several years that I had experience with him. He never showed me his teeth, so I'm sure he has them, because some of the other people have seen them. He had 4 claws, 3, and then I'd say maybe it was appendage would be the thumb, and he had a plate. The closest thing I can describe it would be like a tortoise shell, and that was on his chest. So he had this chest plate that was absolutely organic, and several people have described that as well. And then, you know, then he just had, you know, 4 clawed feet, you know. So, but so from then on, I seen him for who he was and had no problems with him. But at first, it was startling to me because I thought to myself, you look a little bit like a snake, and I don't like snakes. But then I knew that it had never harmed me and it was always good to me. So I used to go on board the ship, and I'd learn things on board the ship. There was a large screen that at this particular time with him, that there was language across it. There was and then there was also sounds going on. I didn't recognize either one of them. The sounds evidently were their race, what I would imagine, their language of their race. But it was like they were training me and teaching me, which now I understand why, because just about a little over a year ago, I started channeling this language now. Not just that, but many other types of languages.
Okay, as a child, I had a couple of weird experiences with UFOs. I can't say I'm really an experiencer. I've just seen UFOs before. I was, I guess the first experience that I truly remember, I mean, I had kind of an experience with my grandmother. We were on our way, if you know where St. George, Utah is, we were going from Salt Lake to St. George, Utah, and I was with, I think, my cousin, if I remember correctly, and my grandma, and we stopped on our way to St. George to visit one of her friends, and it was really late at night, like 10:30 or 11, and I vaguely, like, it was just, it's kind of vague, and how do you explain it? It's like I remember like bits and pieces, but we went in and saw my grandma's friend, and she kind of lives on a land that's it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and so I went in and we visited with her friend, and I think I was about between 6 and 8 years old, and all I remember is somebody pointing out a UFO, like out in the field, and us watching it and seeing it. But that's all I really remember about that. I can't say for sure if that was a true memory. I don't know. It's something that I remember as being that, but that's all I remember. And then me and my grandmother were sitting, and it seems to be always with my grandma for some reason. We were sitting at around a campfire late at night, and it was up at her cabin in Idaho. Everybody else had gone to bed, and it was just me and my grandma sitting out at the campfire, and we looked up. My grandma pointed out there was like 3 really bright lights hovering over the mountains, which wasn't far away because we were up in the mountains, and one was really big, and then there were 2 other ones. And we sat there and watched them, and they kind of moved back and forth a little bit. They weren't stars, I know 100% they weren't stars, and they were really big bright stars, and we watched them for about a half an hour, and then they just disappeared into thin air. And somebody else had reported it in the newspaper the next day from Salt Lake. A couple other people had seen the same thing. And then I guess I started having dreams about a year ago about like little alien beings. I don't know if they're just dreams or if it was real. I don't know, but I've been having a lot of dreams about little, like, grayish type alien beings. They don't look like the typical gray aliens. I mean, they're short and they look like typical gray aliens, except they have different eyes. They're not like the big black eyes. They look more like, I guess, regular eyes. They can blink, and not the big black eyes, but they do have the small nose and little tiny mouth, and I guess the only difference would be their eyes. And I had a dream. I've been having dreams that I'm laying on a table and there's like a light that comes down onto my head. I would talk to them, although I don't remember what I was talking to them about, but they don't seem harmful in any way and not threatening in any way. And then recently, when we still lived in Utah, my youngest daughter, who's 6, pointed out the window. She said, "Mommy, come here, you gotta see this." And I went over to the window and we looked out, and over a mountain, we live, I don't know, there's this mountain not far from us. We saw a bright, it was like an orange ball of light, and it was like hovering over the mountain, and it was moving really fast in one direction, would stop, really fast in the other direction and stop. And we watched it like go back and forth. It was like a orange glowing ball. And yeah, that's pretty much, I guess.
I don't remember exactly what year it was. It was between 2004 and 2007. I know it was the summer, and I'm pretty sure it was on the weekend, because it was very hot, so I know it was summertime. And I was laying in bed, and I heard this voice say, "It's time to go." And I had my back to the door, and I'm facing the window with the outside wall. And I opened my eyes, I reached for my glasses, saying, "Okay, I just got to pee," and put my shoes on. And I rolled back to get up, and there was no one there in the door. Now, a logical person would think, where the hell is this voice coming from, and why am I expecting to see someone there? I was very sad, and I got choked up. My thought was, you left without me. You left me behind. And I almost started to cry. I was choked up. And then I reached up behind my ear, and there was no feeling behind it. There was no reason for me to do it, but I reached up behind my earlobe, and there was a huge lump. And then it kind of hurt. And I started to mess with it. And then my cat that was sleeping on the pillow over here, I know she heard the same thing I heard, because she looked in the same corner up here that I looked. And there was a voice that came through. It said, "Leave it alone." And it wasn't mean, it wasn't aggressive, it was just authoritative or assertive, like, just don't touch it, leave it alone. And so my cat had looked up, I looked up, there was no one there, there was just this disembodied voice. And then I turned and looked back to the door, and I'm thinking, where are my people? And I was expecting to see these cat-like people. They've got cat-like features, and they were in a uniform, and the best that I can explain it would be like Michael Jackson's outfit in Thriller. Kind of, not exactly like that, but that's the closest that I can give you for like the outfit that they had that was red and black, and the other one that was black and red. But there were two of them I was expecting to see. So I had heard George Knapp, who is a local news person, and he seems pretty neutral. He'll debunk people who are crap, and the people who seem authentic, he makes sure that the light, is brought on those people as well. So I had contacted him and asked him for someone local that I could go to for hypnotic regression, who won't lead me anywhere, won't fill my head with anything, just to see if, what actually happened for that experience. So I went to a local hypnotherapist who does hypnotic regression, and during the session, what we found is the one person was saying to the other, "She's starting to wake, it's time to go." So when one said, "She's starting to wake," that actually woke me. So all I heard was, "It's time to go." I thought they were talking to me. They were talking to each other, and that's why they were gone. And I never, because initially when I was playing around back here and I wanted to squeeze it because I thought, it's either a pit bull that just happened to appear overnight or a bug bite. So I was going to squeeze it and get it out, and that's when the voice said, leave it alone. So I kept just, putzing around with it. And over the weeks and months, the bump would get smaller and smaller, but it moved from the back of my earlobe. I don't know if you can see where I'm pressing. It moved from the back here inward more towards the skull. And I'm trying to see if I can find it. They've either removed it or they've moved it in so far that I can't find it anymore, because as long as it's there, I'm going to play with it and feel around for it. But it never really caused me concern that it was there, because I knew it was my people. And now I know that they are the Lyrans.
Well, I've had several experiences. My daughter shared earlier about her experience. For me, I've just been getting more and more downloads with the transforming experiences for the many people that are having these experiences and opening up to receiving the messages that are given now. And I myself have been receiving some and I'm still here after surviving many incidents. I don't believe I've ever been abducted. However, I have been contacted, and the messages again that are coming through, like about the school and bringing Misha and myself together and meeting more people in order to bring everything to pass, that, different cogs of the wheel to make it work, I believe, is part of it. The first experience that I realized was at 3 years old, when she knew what the name of my child, an embryo inside of me. She didn't even know I was pregnant, and at 3 she told me the name of what the name of the child would be. And then so I had a conversation. I may have had this conversation with you though about what the baby's name was. I knew it would be a boy, and what color. I said, would he, so you gave me a blue-eyed blonde baby girl, you gave me a brown-haired brown-eyed baby boy. Is it going to be a red-haired, green-eyed baby boy? And he said, yes, he'll be ready as David. And so that's exactly what he is, and it's very intriguing. So just messages after messages that have come through, and then learning more about them and where they've come from and what messages they have for everyone now.
Sometimes they take you into other time zones. Like, for instance, one time I was actually my sons were woke up, and my oldest son was on the top bunk, and this tall, willowy one, I believe it, the way he described it, seemed like it was that one. And they said, oh, don't be alarmed, we're not here to harm you, and we're not here for you. And then he looked in the hall, and he saw one gray here, me floating in the middle, levitated, and then another right here, and I floated out the window. Now, the same night that happened, I knew I was going through a window. I mean, I knew it, and I asked them, I don't know if it was right then or later, but I asked them, how can I go through a window? And they said, because we took you through a window. We took you through a time that there was no window there. So they're time travelers, whether it's 20 minutes, 15 seconds, or 25 years or 3,000 years. A lot of them are time travelers. I know that seems weird, but it's true.
Yeah, as a child, I was horrified. I never really talked to them when I was younger because it was so scary. I didn't know what to think of it back then. I have 2 children. I have 3. 2 of my kids have had the same experiences as I have, but I was able to help them a little bit better because I understood what was going on, and so I always taught them not to be afraid and to tell them they are in control of the situation, and if they don't like it, tell them to leave. But I didn't know that as a child, and so my mom scared me by telling me that it was bad, or I shouldn't be talking to them, or a lot of times she didn't believe me and told me it was my imagination. So I didn't have anybody to tell me it was okay and that it was, you know, to be comfortable with it. So it was horrifying for me, but I would see them, like I would normally see them as like it was like a white misty thing, and I would see it going down the hall, or just at one point going, like there was one time I had my friend over, my parents weren't home, and we actually heard like thumping down the stairs, like somebody, you know how you go down the stairs on your butt and you, as a little kid, and you're like boom, 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 boom down the stairs. We kept hearing this noise going boom, 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 boom down the stairs, and we're like, nobody's home. So we went to go check it out, and right in front of us, we heard this boom, 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 boom down the stairs, and then we heard footsteps coming back up the stairs towards us, but there was nobody there. And my friend heard it, and I heard it, and it was really scary. I've had, oh my gosh, so many scary things, like I'd hear my name being called a lot when I was a child. There was nobody there. I would hear, like, sometimes screaming, like a little kid talking. I couldn't quite understand what they were saying. I would see like white mists and things and like orbs. And then every single house I ever lived in had ghosts in it. And in my 20s, it got even more crazy, to the point where I would have dreams about like random people that I knew, their dead relatives would come to me and tell me things, and I would relay the message back to them. I would sometimes, not always, because a lot of times I was too afraid to say anything, but if I was comfortable with them, I would tell them sometimes things, and they'd be like, holy crap, that just happened, or you know, like, oh my gosh, that describes my grandma, or whatever. My dad passed away when I was 18, and I had a lot of dreams with him in it, and he would tell me things that were going to happen in my life, and then they would happen. And when I woke up, and I had this like line of spirits lined up next to my bed, and this one guy was kind of more dominant than the rest of them, and he was telling me, do you know how long we've been waiting? Do you know how long we've been waiting to talk to you? I was just horrified. Like, it scared me so bad. I instantly started like freaking out, and I said, no, 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 go away, go away. And I kind of regret doing that, because I think I started asking God at that point, take it away. This is scary. Take it away from me. I don't want it anymore. And I think that's when I started to close down, and I haven't really, it slowly over time, maybe 5-6 years, started to go away. And I'm not as psychic, I guess you could say, as I used to be, and I still see them. I still hear them. They still wake me up in the middle of the night. But as far as like seeing like people's dead relatives, I don't anymore. And yeah, it's not as controlled as it used to be now. It just randomly I'll get things, or they'll wake me up in the middle of the night sometimes. And I closed up a lot, I think, because of that. So
and then like we came here to Las Vegas, and here we moved into a house that a family before us had lived in, and we had actually gone through the house, and the whole family was there. And there was a kid, I want to describe him, he was just wearing all black, like normal, just average looking like boy in his teens, like maybe 16 or 17, and he was in one of the top rooms. Well, they moved out, we moved in, and a couple months into living there, I started having really, really bad nightmares and feeling very like depressed and very like just sad all the time. And I figured it was just because I'm a teenager, you know, just hormones, and just new school and not really making many friends in that amount of time. And then late at night, I started being visited by the kid who lived there before. And it turns out, I guess, a couple months after we had moved in, he had killed himself. So right when I started having those experiences is when he killed himself. And it was pretty scary during that time. We lived there for, I think, almost 3 years. And during that entire time, I would have terrible, terrible nightmares. One time I was putting makeup on in my boudoir, and I was just doing it in the mirror, and behind me out of the closet came a gigantic shadow. My bed was here and the closet was here, and the shadow came out, went around my bed and out my door. And it was so scary because it happened so fast and it just felt so cold. It was just one of those things, like weird things to happen. Late at night I had a cat and I thought the cat was on the bed. And I was like, oh, Sammy, and I looked down and the bed is depressed and there's no one there. And it was absolutely frightening just because you can't explain it and there's nothing you can really do, it's just there. And I would have things move, my music, I had a gigantic iPod player thing and that would be moved across my room and it was heavy. It was just one of those things of, I don't think he liked me being in his room, so I started like not staying in there as much. I would like sleep out in like our little game area, just because it felt so oppressive in that room. And I think it was just because that was his area, and no matter what I did, that was his. So whenever we lived there, that was always rough, and I had a lot of bad nights there.
With the Bee Gees, I was just, they came to me the first time I was 3, and they were about the same size as me, and I was under the stairs, and I saw them under the stairs, and I checked to see what it was. And of course, I was not afraid. I thought they were just really nice, and I could feel, as a child, I could sense their energy was not danger or anything like that. And so I had several experiences. The one, that particular time, I just was levitated up and I was flying, like I guess you might say Superman would be doing. I was just flying over the housetops with the ETs, and then I don't remember their ship, but I would imagine I was on the way up to the ship, because I remember other ships, but not theirs.
Okay, I'll give you an idea how I got involved. Most people in the UFO business get involved because something happened. They don't logically conclude that they should study this. I was 22 years old. I was in Manitoba, Canada, which is just north of the North Dakota border. I was interested in near-death studies. I had done a paper at the university working with near-death studies at the hospital. And a series of sightings began in a small town just north of the American border. And I said to my friends, I said, instead of driving around the city, why don't we just go out and see this? I had no interest in UFOs, can never remember having thought about the subject. We didn't go, but the reports kept going, and then suddenly they caught this thing on the ground. It was on the ground, and a local TV crew caught this thing jumping up in the air. And then I said, come on, let's go see what they're looking at. So I went out, and I always describe it as, you buy the lottery ticket, you know there's a chance you can win, but you're not going to win. So I went out figuring we're not going to see anything, nothing's going to happen. We were there for an hour. And I didn't know what everybody was looking at. And just as we're leaving, they said, we're going to go into town one more time. If we don't see anything, we're going home. I said, good. This is a total waste of time. Let's go. We're coming back into this small town, 2,000 people, and the thing came right in front of the car. It was very low. It was the type of thing where nobody said, is that what they're looking at? Is that what everybody's reporting? Everybody instantly went, there it is. Everybody instantly knew this is what they were talking about. It was almost like it was alive. It was like pulsing like a heart. It was red, and it was pulsing. It was moving up and down, moving very, very slowly, way slower than a plane. And it came right in front of the car, and I just sort of like fell off the edge of the earth. I mean, I just, wow. I went out the second night later, 2 nights later, took all my friends and everybody I could drag out there. They all went home. They didn't want to stick around. They left after about an hour. The second night, he came right at us. Came very, very close the second night. And then I was hooked. So what I did is I started to talk to the people in this small town of 2,000 people. And 59% of people in the high school, kids in the high school, said they'd seen this thing. It was a very high percentage of the town had seen this thing. Most people didn't want to talk about it, but they had seen it. And so I wrote a manuscript, which I tried to get published. And the local publisher said to me, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. And I went, wow, I couldn't believe it. And so at that point, I really didn't care about sightings. I didn't really care about what people had seen. All I was interested in is who knew something about what I'd seen. Somebody must know what this is all about. And I started this pursuit where I started to find the highest level sources inside the government, inside military, inside the military industrial complex. Somebody had to know what I'd seen. And I started with the Canadian government. I started what the Canadian government was doing in the 1950s, found out that the head of the Canadian government was a contactee. The guy who ran the program was talking to aliens, was going to land an alien at a top secret base in Canada, actually had it fly over an observatory in Ottawa, and when he made it public, they shut the whole program down. It was so embarrassing to the Canadian government. So I started there, and that led me to the former head of Penn State University. And we chased him for 8 years. He indicated right from the word go that he had been at a series of briefings at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1950, dealing with the recovered crash flying saucer and the bodies. But he didn't want to talk. He said, I can't talk about this, which is what it all comes down to. It's classified. It's the most highly classified secret in the United States. That's what the Canadians were told in 1950, and it's in a Canadian government top secret document. It says, Americans informed us. The subject is the most highly classified subject in the United States. Flying saucers exist, and it talked about a small group trying to figure the thing out. So we chased this Dr. Eric Walker, who was the chairman of the board of the Institute for Defense Analysis, the top military think tank for the U.S. military. He was a co-developer of the homing torpedo, had 14 honorary doctorate degrees. He was an assistant secretary of defense under Eisenhower, in charge of weapon development. Very high-level guy. And so for 8 years, he played the game, I can't talk about this, I don't deal with this kind of stuff, and we chased him. And at the end, we published the book, and he still continued to talk to us, indirectly dropping little hints. We put out a book on him and what we had discovered, just basically put all the transcripts of what he told us over 8 years. And when he died, I went to look for his files at Penn State University, which is the big Ivy League engineering college, and it indicated that the files had gone to some of his files had gone to the Truman Library. So I went to the Truman Library, and it was at the Truman Library I couldn't find his files. But I suddenly decided, well, what does the most powerful man in the world know about the most important subject in the world, which is UFOs? If you understand the UFO subject, it's the most important subject of all times. So I started looking, and I found a few documents in the Truman Library. I went to the Eisenhower Library, found a few documents. Suddenly decided something's wrong here. The president has to know more. So I spent 20 years chasing the president of the United States, and I managed at one point to talk to Dick Cheney on the air, live on the air. And I asked him the question which I always say to people, that you ask if you get a high-level, four-star general, president, vice president, something at that level. You don't want to know if they've seen a UFO. You don't want to know what they think about UFOs. All you want to do is ask them what's called the briefing question. So I said to Mr. Cheney, in all your jobs in government, have you ever been briefed on the subject of UFOs? If so, when was it, and what were you told? And Cheney hesitated, and he said, if I had been briefed on that subject, it would probably be classified, and I wouldn't be talking about it. And that's what it comes down to. It's the most highly classified subject. It involves, of course, hardware. You don't want to give it to Al-Qaeda, this technology. You don't want to give the energy technology to Al-Qaeda, because we may be the good guys, we may use it for the betterment of the planet, but Al-Qaeda is going to use it to kill Americans. And that's why it's classified. And it's also classified because, as Misha stated, all aliens are telepathic. In 1947, the Americans recovered a crash at Roswell, New Mexico, and we now believe that one of the aliens was alive. So when they recovered that alien, the alien was talking in their heads. It was telepathic. And if you're the military, if you're the CIA, which I also chased, I chased the highest level intelligence officers around. If you are the CIA and you have this ability to talk in people's heads, this is technology that you'd like to have. So that's what basically the cover-up is about. I believe the president knows. I believe he's sworn to secrecy same as everybody else. And that's where it's at. This is my idea of what's going on. We used to believe that the physical spectrum, whatever we saw before 1800, before we knew there was X-rays and gamma rays and radio waves, microwaves, before then we believed that everything we saw, that was the world. And then we suddenly realized that there was things outside our physical dimension that we couldn't see, but we could measure. So then we believe that it's a spectrum that goes infinitely in both directions. And if it goes infinitely in both directions, the amount that you can see is basically zero. If it's infinite in both directions, what you're seeing is nothing. It's nothing whatsoever. So you would assume with consciousness is the same thing. Consciousness, and then all of us know these things, that there's near-death experiences and ghosts and remote viewing and alien abduction and stuff. So you'd say, well, consciousness is part of a bigger spectrum. That consciousness is more than just a conscious spectrum. But the present worldview is no. It's just consciousness. All the rest of this stuff is just garbage. It doesn't exist. All it is we're back to the 1800s saying the only consciousness is what is happening in your head. The brain produces consciousness, and that's all there is. There is no, subconscious. There is no world out there and spirits and stuff like that. So that's where we're at. And this is very important. This is where my whole theory comes down, the right brain, left brain thing. What happened is and I'll do a quick short story. Epilepsy started in the 1940s. They realized that in order to stop epilepsy, if they cut the corpus callosum between the two halves of the brain, they could stop the epilepsy. But when they cut the corpus callosum, which is 300 million fibers between the two brains, when they cut that, the two brains could no longer talk to each other. And we learned, and you will not learn this in school, I guarantee you, if someone says you only have one brain, turn around and run. You have two brains, absolutely have two brains, and they're completely different. They do two different things. They will actually fight with each other. And the reason they learned it was because they cut the corpus callosum, and they started to study the people whose corpus callosum had been cut, where the brains wouldn't talk to each other. So your left brain is your conscious brain. It's the one that does the talking. Your right brain, your universal brain, the subconscious that can link into the universal field, cannot talk. The only way that you can get it to talk is to the right brain works the left side of the body, the left brain works the right side of the body. So what they do to talk to the right brain, the non-verbal brain, this sort of subconscious, is they say, pick up off the table what you saw, and the left hand will pick up whatever it saw.
I would like to start off with saying one thing, that I believe, and I'm not the only one that feels this way, but that we agreed to participate in these experiences. Some people call them abductions. I don't choose to use that word. I call them encounters and experiences. So before we came on this planet, we're real light beings, so we knew that we were going to be experiencing some of the things that on this planet, and we agreed to it. So we agreed to have these abductions for their knowledge, for our knowledge, for the experience of it, for the consciousness raising of it. So then there was like I said, it was a Willie one, and he was with me all the time through my young adulthood and my first gynecological examination, and I was very frightened, and he leaned over and looked in my eyes and said, do not be afraid, we're not going to harm you, this is something necessary for the hybrid program. So that's telepathic. All of their communication is telepathic.
It was a very hot August night, and I remember I had to go to the window to get cool. It was really, really warm. And as I was sitting there on the edge of the bed looking out the window, I saw a beam of light that came down and went over the barn, went over the farmhouse, flooded the room. It went all over the dirt road, it went all over the pasture and all of that. And I just thought that's the oddest thing for in my mind, the only thing I could think of was it was a helicopter. But of course it wasn't. And I saw that after it had done its search, it moved on to the neighbor's farm. And then the lights just seemed to turn off and it zipped away. And that was my first experience. I don't believe I did not in any way get abducted at that point. But then I talked to my grandparents the next morning and I said, hey, I saw this thing, and I described it. And they patted me on the head, and they more or less dismissed it as a child's imagination. So I got to feel the feeling that maybe I shouldn't talk about it. So that's the first one. The second one was really weird. I was out in the middle of the desert, and I saw this thing coming up from this angle, and it went to directly above my head. And it was a giant, huge thing. I couldn't even tell you how big it was because it literally was unmeasurable from where I was at in the desert, and it blocked out a ton of stars. That's all I know. What was interesting about this one is I was the only one that saw it. Little things came out of it, like little orbs, or maybe it was, larger ships. I don't know, but maybe like the size of a basketball would come out and disappear, and other ones were coming in. And I thought, boy, this is really cool, So I got my binoculars out and looked, and I could see they were some sort of craft coming out. And it had lights. It seems to me the whole thing was a glow of orange and yellow, sort of a yellow orangey, and then it had lights that were red and white. And orange and various other colors, but it was big. The last one, I was coming back from a trip to see my mom up in Washington State. I was on a plane. I looked out and I saw, just sort of like at the corner of my eyes, I saw a silver thing flying directly beside the airplane, but about, I'm bad with numbers, but I'm going to say half a mile away, you know. And I turned instinctively to the person next to me, and I didn't know him. He's a stranger. And I said, "You've got to look out the window. There's a UFO." And as he leaned forward to look, and I turned around, the thing was already gone. So 3 experiences, which pretty much got me started in UFO investigation, and that's just about it. I don't think I ever was in any way abducted, though.
Factions of our government, a deep, deep black ops, where lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of your money goes for your taxes goes to, have these projects that they do. And some of them are back engineering of the ships that they've either shot down, or they have a lot, this is huge now, that they are interested in the telepathy, in fact, I think Grant talked about this, yeah, so I'm not going to go too much into it. So they're so interested in what goes on, how people are psychic, how they can use these people for their own means, and they do. And CIA that says that all of their mind control programs were gone in 1990, or in the 80s or 90s. It is not. It is still going, and I know people in my groups right now that are dealing with, and now they're dealing in a much more severe way. Well, when I was abducted, I would be taken in and interrogated, and sometimes hurt and injured, but in most cases, and roughed up type of thing. I was put in like water deprivation, and I was put in, dark rooms and cages and things like that. Now they can, and they have the ability, and I wish I could tell you what the name of it is. And I can't think what it's called, but I'm sure you'll find somebody who's going to tell you the name of it. But it is all done through a computer somebody sits in front of, and they, because they've implanted a person, they're able to manipulate their mind. They can put images in it, they can put sounds in it, they can put pain in their body, they can do all of these things. It's psychometry, and it's like they use ELFs, there's all kinds of different things they use. So that's still going on right now. And like I said, I have an MK Ultra and a mind control group that I have on the internet with people who are talking about it right now, that it's happening to them. And these people can't even hold a job down because they're being tortured daily, nightly. They can't sleep. They're either having, like they'll do things like this. They'll say, "You're a piece of crap, and you're not worth anything, and you'll never amount to anything," and this kind of battering over and over. Or you're going to split up. I mean, you're going to flip one day and kill your family. Things like that. That's just terrible. Those are the things they do. Plus, like I said, so that's the psychic phenomena, the telepathy that they've been working on. They do remote viewing. They shoot. They shoot goats or something like that. Movie has a lot of truth to it, and they do have the ability to kill somebody telepathically through remote viewing. They use a lot of us, people who are experiencers, because we are more psychic. If you haven't been psychic your whole life, and most people have, they become more psychic when they have after their ET experiences. So what else do they do? Back engineer. So back engineering is, of course, taking ships that's crashed and Bill Uhouse, listen to his interview. Very interesting man. He talks about how the back engineering, the mind control part, because I was also talking about how on the underground bases, I was being tortured. I was being used in mind control. I was having different people have different things, but I was having this helmet put on my head and had these images that were shooting at me, and they were like horrific, horrible murderers and killing and gross stuff and scary beings or whatever you want to call it. And they would just keep doing this, and it was like in a holographic helmet, and they just keep doing that until I get to a point that I was desensitized. So I was going to be talking about the connection between our government, the mind control, and the extraterrestrials, because there are types of ETs down there. I think I already told you about the reptilian that I encountered down there and how they gave me messages. Yeah, okay. So that's part of it. There's other types, grays. There's other human, probably ETs. They're what I would call, there's 89-90% of positive ETs, and there's 10% that are working with factions of our government. Deep black ops.
All I can state is what I believe. I believe every president knows. I believe every president is sworn to secrecy about the subject. They make it look like the president doesn't know. I know that in 1992, the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Byrd, tried to get to the bottom of this thing, and I know that a report came back to the Senate Appropriations Committee, which is the one that spends all the money for the U.S. government. They hand out the money. That they were told that this is for real. They sent out an investigator who was determining how much the secrecy is costing. So they knew. Very high levels, but very, very compartmentalized. That's how they keep it secret. Very few people know what's actually going on. Well, it's the same as the secret for example, how to build a nuclear weapon. That's still secret. How, which leaders we've bumped off in foreign countries. It's just basically classified, and there may be maybe 12 people, 15 people who know the whole secret. And those are people who are highly trusted, who are, people that you can assured that aren't going to run away with the secret. Very few people know. It's what's called compartmentalization. So in a program, if you need to know how to build a fuse, that's all you need. You have to know how the program works. It's the same thing here. Only a few people know how to put it all together. Somebody may be working on it and they think they're working on the UFO program, but they really don't know what they're working on. So it's all very compartmentalized, and very few people understand. And it's like everything else. Very few, you never see the president stand up and say, well, I'm going to tell you about this secret. This happened. They never talk about any secrets. But if you hear Obama, he just did a recent interview on a comedy show, and he was asked, and he said, I can't talk about it. And then he made a couple of jokes, but he basically said, I can't talk about it. And that's basically what it comes down to, is that he's sworn to secrecy. And because that's the way they start when they give you a briefing, is they say, this is top secret with a code name after it, and these are the violations, and you have to sign for this security oath. So if you're a patriotic American and you want to help the country, you're going to play along with the game. And there's been 14 presidents that have dealt with this subject, and every single one of them has played the game, whether it's Republican or Democrat, which indicates to me that everybody who is read into the program believes they're doing the right thing. They believe that they're following the law and they're doing the right thing. And I think it basically comes down to the fact that it's what's called lead time in weapons. So if you have an atomic bomb in World War II, you develop the atomic bomb, you drop the atomic bomb, and the Japanese say, well, okay, we're going to build a bomb. It's going to take you 6 years to build. The war is over in a couple of days. And that's what it comes down to, is being so far ahead of your enemies that when it comes time to use a weapon, they can't build a weapon. And that's what it all comes down to. It's basically military weapons and not giving it to your enemy. So that's basically why the secrecy and why it's so highly compartmentalized. The more compartmentalized it is, the easier it is to keep the secret, because almost nobody knows what's going on. The aliens are very telepathic. So their telepathy, as I'll show you, is right brain. Left brain is very sort of here and now, conscious mind. And what I believe the aliens and spirits and all these people that are downloading stuff to different people are doing is they're moving us from the left brain to the right brain. They're moving us from a male-dominated fighting world to a female-dominated world that nurtures. That's the move that's taking place. It's going from the understanding that I'm an individual, I have the rights. If I want to dump toxic stuff into the river, I'll do it. Now we're moved to a right brain world where it says, no, I don't care how much money you got, I don't care how powerful you are. The oneness is more important than the individual. So we're moving from this individual view that we can just chop down all the trees, we can do whatever the hell we want, we can build a nuclear power plant in the middle of San Francisco, to the world where the protection of the whole is now being considered more important. So Dr. Diana Powell, I'll show her thing that I'm going to end with her thing with the telepathic kid. She talks this whole thing about the belief in being a separate individual. It's very important. The left brain, the other one believes in the sense of higher power, that everything's unified, everything's together. When you look at all sorts of paranormal phenomena, and I go through, as I said, I go through all the book, I go through all these different paranormal phenomena. UFO abductees are all right brain creative people. Remote viewing, it's done right brain. When they give you a target, it's completely blind. All they do is give you a number. If they were to give you a hint and say this is in Egypt, the left brain is going to get involved. The left brain is going to say, "Oh, it's the pyramid. I know it's the pyramid." Number one thing in remote viewing they tell you is do not guess what it is, because rational, that's analytical. Don't analyze it. You have to leave the left brain behind. You got to go to the right brain, and when you're doing remote viewing, they'll say, just describe what you're feeling, just describe what you taste, just describe what you smell, just describe the here and now. Don't try to guess what it is. So it's right brain. Hypnosis is basically shut down the chatter of the left brain so you can open up the subconscious mind. Psychic phenomena is the same sort of thing. Meditation, same thing. Shut down the left brain, shut down the chatter when you're trying to meditate. It's your left brain that's doing the talking. It's talking away, and it just won't shut up. And what you're trying to do is shut the left brain down.
The hybrid program itself, I should say, is a joint, I believe, joint co-creation of both the ETs and humans to participate in a genetic experiment that they've been doing since the beginning of time. The ancient aliens, if anybody's familiar with ancient aliens, they have been seeding our planets since the beginning. So it's just continued on, and now with the advent of phones and computers and TV, now you hear about it more, but it's been happening for so long. And so the hybrid program is a joint program with where they take eggs from the women, or they take sperm from the men, and they genetically, do their DNA and genetics and splice together everything and have children. And I have drawings of children, and I actually have a picture of what I consider to be a hybrid starseed, because now we feel that they're living among us and they're actually being born to the experiencers now. So not all the hybrids are going back to the ships or going back to their planets and such, because usually, try to make this so short, usually women lose these children in the gestation period, the first 4 months of the pregnancy. So women have false pregnancies and things like that. So, but then, and many cases where women, including myself, went to the hospital thinking something was going on, and the baby's gone, and the doctor says, "Where's the fetus?" And I go, "I don't know." So things like that. And so that's the hybrid program in a nutshell.
What I want people to know is it's not a physical universe. I want people to know that they're here, they're helping us, that it's much bigger. If you get into the whole issue that you'll talk to experiencers about the fact that they will remember, for example, the Moody Blues, the famous band, the Moody Blues out of Great Britain. We'll talk about the fact that they were told before they were born that they were going to be musicians and that they were going to put these lyrics, these sort of like UFO spiritual lyrics into their thing. Once you get a situation where this thing goes back before birth, it's a spiritual problem. It is no longer a physical problem. And then you start looking at why are we here? What's going on? How does this fit into the fact that you might have had numerous lifetimes? Because we're sort of stuck on the thing we want, free energy so we can drive, cheap cars and stuff like that. But once you get past before birth, and there's a lot of people who will say, oh yeah, I remember dealing with the aliens in a past lifetime and stuff like that. Once you get even one case, prove one case, it becomes a spiritual problem. And that's what I think people got to realize. It's not a physical universe. It's much more complex. It's much more of a spiritual universe in which this problem fits in, and I think the aliens are here to raise consciousness because they're very interested in nuclear weapons. My first sighting occurred just north of the Minuteman III missile silos in North Dakota. It's a very key issue, nuclear weapons. And the other issue is we're putting the world off the cliff environmentally. And every experiencer who's on the ship, if you get to that point where you can regress them, every single experiencer will say they were shown a TV screen in which they watched the devastation of the Earth. They watched the Earth, the environment destroyed. That's one of the main messages of the aliens, the nuclear weapons and the environmental damage that we're doing.
We could be spies, spying on our own kind, and who would know, because it could be anybody, especially if the abductee didn't know they were implanted. The other thing they could be is possibly a soldier for the aliens. Now, that would create a lot of problems. Just think about that. If out of 10 people you got one person that suddenly becomes a spy for a hostile and greedy and selfish alien race, which I don't know that they exist, I'd like to believe, truly I would, that it's all about love and oneness. I really would. I'd like to think that we're all, worried maybe about the aliens, what they're going to do to us based on our own human characteristics. And by that I mean, what did we do, we meaning humans, do to other humans in the past that we could use as an example of what could happen today? For example, what happened when the conquistadors came over and took over the Incas? Well, they just wanted the gold, and they didn't care, what they did to the king, who was trying to work with them and thought of them as gods. They didn't care what they did to the people, and literally the whole race just sort of, I don't know, they just sort of disappeared. We can't really find out what happened to them. Then, of course, there's the Europeans who came to America, and what did we do? Always throughout history, the more advanced, technologically advanced society coming into a pristine environment of a lower intelligence will always take it over. Now, if we use our own human history to predict what's happening with the aliens, they see Earth as this juicy little water planet that has tons of biological diversity. It has a lot of animals, plants, minerals, things that they want.
They're telepathic, but of course they do have a language, and they're different. Some of them are very guttural, some of them are sing-songy, some of them are kind of cat-like, some of them are clicky, and when my hybrids not first, but a year ago, a hybrid came to me and started talking it to me. And if you can take your left brain and turn it off and let your right brain, which is the spiritual part of your brain, and the thought and the feeling part and the heart part of your brain, then you just can allow things to come through. And I started channeling the galactic language, and since then, I've had numerous types of language now. It's not anything you have to be in a meditative state or in a alter kind of brainwave kind of thing, Find other people to talk to. You're not alone. I have my group that I facilitate here in my home twice a month. I also have internet groups. I have 3 internet groups on Google Hangout. There's other people. Find a group, find a support group, find other people that you can share with. Free, Free, is a wonderful place to go on the internet.